It was supposed to be just another morning for Richard Hale, one of the most powerful billionaires in New York City. His world was made of glass towers, black-tinted cars, and people who bowed before his name. He owned half the skyline, and he liked it that way. But that morning, everything changed inside a small roadside diner off Highway 71. The rain had just stopped. The smell of wet asphalt filled the air as Richard's black Mercedes rolled to a stop in front of Maggie's Diner, an old-fashioned place where truckers usually grabbed breakfast. It wasn't the kind of place someone like Richard ever visited. But his 7-year-old daughter, Lila, was hungry, and her innocent brown eyes had begged, "Daddy, please, can we stop here? Just for pancakes?" He couldn't say no. Not to her. As the two entered the diner, all eyes turned. People recognized him, the billionaire who had everything. Dressed in his $1,000 suit, Richard looked like a man who didn't belong in a place where coffee cost $2. And kindness came free. A waitress walked up to them with a smile that felt warmer than the morning sun. Her name tag read Tanya. She was a black woman in her early 30s, wearing a simple uniform and tired shoes. But her eyes, they carried kindness, strength, and something else Richard hadn't seen in years: peace. "Good morning. You two look like you need something cozy. Pancakes and hot cocoa?" she asked with a gentle laugh. Lila grinned and nodded eagerly. Richard forced a polite smile. "Sure, and coffee, black." Tanya winked at Lila. "Got it, sweetie. Pancakes coming right up." As she walked away, Richard checked his phone. 20 new emails, 3 missed calls. Business never stopped, even here. He was halfway through replying when he noticed something odd. Lila's eyes had filled with tears. "Hey, what's wrong, sweetheart?" he asked, lowering his phone. She sniffled, looking out the window. "Mom used to bring me here before." Richard froze. His late wife, Emily, had passed away 2 years ago. He hadn't known this diner meant something to Lila. Before he could say another word, Tanya returned, holding a tray with pancakes shaped like hearts and a mug of cocoa topped with whipped cream. "Uh-oh, what's with those sad eyes?" Tanya asked softly, setting the plate down. Layla tried to wipe her tears, but Tanya knelt beside her. "Hey, sweetheart, you know what? Crying's okay. Sometimes pancakes taste better after a little rain." Lila giggled through her tears. Tanya smiled and opened her arms, and before anyone could stop her, Lila jumped into them, sobbing quietly against the waitress's shoulder. The whole diner went silent. Richard's body stiffened. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. His billionaire instinct screamed, "Don't touch my daughter! Who does she think she is?" But then, he saw it. Lila's small hands clutching Tanya's apron. The calm look on Tanya's face. Not pity, not discomfort, just pure love. And for the first time in years, Richard saw his daughter smile while crying. Something deep inside him cracked. The man who had spent billions to build walls around his heart suddenly felt powerless. He wanted to speak, to pull his daughter away, to say something that would make sense of what he was seeing. But his voice wouldn't come. His throat was tight, his chest heavy. Then Tanya whispered something to Lila, words soft enough that only they could hear. But Richard caught one line. "It's okay, baby. You're not alone. Love doesn't go away. It just changes its home." Lila nodded, still clinging to her. Richard turned his face away, pretending to check his phone again. But his vision blurred. A single tear rolled down his cheek, the first in years. He wasn't used to kindness without a price. He wasn't used to realness. And yet, here it was, in a small diner. From a stranger who earned in a year what he spent on a single dinner. When Tanya finally stood up and went back to the counter, Richard whispered to himself, "What just happened?" He looked around and no one was judging. No one was taking pictures. It was as if time had stopped. He glanced at Lila, who was now smiling while eating her pancakes. She looked happy. For the first time, he didn't feel like the billionaire everyone feared. He just felt like a father. But what Richard didn't know was that Tanya's life was about to collide with his in a way that would change them, both forever. Because that hug wasn't just a moment. It was destiny knocking softly on the heart of a man who had forgotten how to feel. The next morning, Richard Hale couldn't get the image out of his mind. His daughter hugging that waitress, Tanya. He'd faced boardroom battles, billion-dollar deals, and politicians begging for donations. But nothing had shaken him like that moment in the diner. That night, after putting Lila to bed, he found himself standing by her door. She was holding the small napkin Tanya had given her, where she had written in neat handwriting, "For brave little girls and dads who are still learning to smile." Tanya. Richard read it over and over. There was no number, no name, nothing else. Just that note. He didn't know why, but he wanted to see her again. The next day, his driver asked, "Sir, heading to the office?" Richard hesitated, then said, "No, take me to Maggie's diner." The driver blinked, confused, but didn't question it. Billionaires could change plans. That's what they did. When he walked in, the smell of bacon and coffee filled the air. Tanya was there, laughing with a group of regulars. She noticed him almost immediately. Her expression froze for a second, then softened into a warm smile. "Well, if it isn't Mr. Fancy Coffee," she teased gently. He smiled awkwardly. "You remember my order." "I remember people, not orders," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "How's the little princess doing?" "She's good. She keeps talking about you." Tanya smiled. "That kid's got a heart as bright as the morning." Richard glanced around. "Can I talk to you for a minute? Outside?" "Sure," she said, nodding to another waitress to cover her tables. Outside, the sun was peeking through the clouds. Richard took a breath. He didn't really know what he wanted to say. "Look," he began, "I wanted to thank you for yesterday. What you did for my daughter, it meant more than you know." Tanya shrugged. "You don't have to thank me?" She just needed a hug. "We all do sometimes." Richard paused. "You have kids?" Her eyes darkened for a moment. "I did," she said softly. The words hit like a whisper in a storm. Richard hesitated. "Did?" Tanya looked down. "My little boy, Marcus. He was 7. Same age as your daughter. He passed away 3 years ago. Car accident. Drunk driver." For a second, Richard's breath caught in his chest. "I'm sorry," he whispered. She nodded slowly, forcing a smile. "It's okay. I learned something after that. When you lose someone, love doesn't die. It just finds another person to land on. Maybe that's what happened yesterday. Your little girl needed the love I still had left." Richard stood silent. His billion-dollar world suddenly felt very small. "You know," Tanya said after a moment, "you looked lost yesterday too. Like you were there, but your heart wasn't." He gave a sad laugh. "You're not wrong. I've been lost since my wife died. I buried myself in work, thinking money could fill the silence. But when Lila hugged you, I realized I don't even know my own daughter anymore." Tanya looked at him, her voice soft but steady. "Maybe it's not too late to start knowing her." They stood there quietly for a few seconds, two strangers bound by grief. Then Richard did something he hadn't done in years. He reached out his hand. "Would you have dinner with us sometime? I mean, just to say thank you." "Lila would love it." Tanya looked surprised, then smiled. "Dinner with a billionaire, huh? Sounds fancy, but only if I can bring dessert. I'm my grandma's peach cobbler." He chuckled. "Deal." That weekend, Tanya came over to Richard's mansion, though she called it a museum with carpets. Lila ran straight into her arms, laughing. Tanya brought her famous cobbler, and the whole house smelled like cinnamon and warmth, two things that had been missing for far too long. As the night went on, Richard watched the two of them, his daughter and the waitress, talking like they'd known each other forever. He couldn't remember the last time the house had been filled with laughter instead of silence. When Lila ran upstairs to show Tanya her toys, Richard said quietly, "You've brought something into this house I didn't even know was missing." Tanya smiled, looking around. "You don't need more things, Richard. You just need more heart." He nodded. "Maybe I needed someone to remind me." After Tanya left that night, Richard stood at his window looking over the city. His phone buzzed, an email from his assistant reminding him about an upcoming investor, dinner worth millions, but he didn't open it. He looked instead at the photo on his table, Emily and Lila, smiling in the sun, and suddenly, for the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. He whispered, "Thank you, Tanya." But what he didn't know was that this was just the beginning, because within a week, something happened that would shake everything. His reputation, his wealth, and his very belief about what truly matters. The world was about to see a Billionaire and a waitress at the center of a story no one could have predicted. And the unthinkable was about to happen. A week after that dinner, everything in Richard Hale's life began to change. Slowly, quietly, and then all at once. He still woke up in the same massive mansion, still had a calendar full of meetings, but something inside him had shifted. Every morning now began with pancakes, not from a chef, but from Richard himself. He was learning to make them for Lila because that's what she loved. And sometimes on weekends, they'd stop by Maggie's diner, where Tanya would greet them with that same warm smile that had once melted his walls. But one morning, as Richard walked into the diner, things felt different. A few reporters were sitting in the corner, whispering and glancing at him. Tanya noticed too. She frowned, but went on serving coffee as if nothing had changed. Richard's phone buzzed. It was his assistant, Mark. "Sir, you might want to see this. It's all over social media." Richard opened his news app and froze. A headline flashed in bold letters. "Billionaire Richard Hale. Seen with black waitress. Mystery. Woman sparks online debate." Below it was a photo of Tanya hugging Lila in front of the diner. Someone had taken it that first day. Richard's hands clenched. "They make it sound like—" Tanya placed a hand on his arm. "Hey, breathe. It's just noise." "Let them talk." But the noise didn't stop. Within hours, hundreds of comments poured in online. Some kind, some cruel. "Who is she?" "Gold digger alert." "Wow, billionaire falls for a waitress? How original." "Leave her alone. She's just a woman showing kindness." By evening, reporters were outside the diner. Tanya's manager told her to take time off until things cooled down. Richard was furious. "I'll handle this. No one gets to treat you like this because of me." But Tanya shook her head. "You can't buy silence, Richard. Not this time. You have to let people see who you really are, not the man they read about." Her words hit deep. For the first time, he realized she wasn't afraid of the spotlight. She just refused to let hate define kindness. The next day, Richard called a press conference. The media thought he was going to deny everything, distance himself from Tanya, maybe even call it a misunderstanding. Instead, he walked up to the podium, Lila holding his hand. He cleared his throat. "A few weeks ago, my daughter met someone special, someone who reminded us what real compassion looks like. Her name is Tanya Brown. She's a waitress, a mother who lost her son, and one of the kindest souls I've ever met." The cameras clicked rapidly. "She didn't ask for my money. She didn't ask for my attention. She gave something I forgot existed, genuine human connection. My daughter cried, and she held her. That hug changed my life." He paused, emotion tightening his voice. "If you want to talk about someone, talk about how a woman with nothing gave a billionaire everything he was missing. Heart." The room went silent. Even the reporters who came ready to tear him apart had no words. He ended with, "We judge too easily. We forget that behind every uniform, behind every face we ignore, there's a story." Tanya reminded me of that, and I won't forget it again. Then he stepped down, ignoring the flashes, ignoring the whispers. Lila smiled up at him. "Mom would be proud," she said softly. He hugged her tight. "I think so too, sweetheart." The next morning, Tanya was sitting on her porch when she saw a familiar black car pull up. Richard stepped out, holding a small box. She crossed her arms playfully. "If that's money, I'm throwing it back at you." He laughed. "It's not money." He opened the box. Inside was a small golden locket, engraved with a simple line. "Love doesn't go away. It just changes its home." Tanya gasped. "That's what I said to Lila." He nodded. "It stuck with me. You gave us something we didn't even know we needed." She smiled, eyes glistening. "You didn't have to do this." "I know," he said softly. "But I wanted to, because sometimes saying thank you isn't enough." He hesitated, then asked, "Would you consider helping me with something?" "Depends what it is," she said cautiously. "I'm starting a foundation," he explained. "For single parents, for people rebuilding their lives. I want you to help run it. You understand heart better than anyone I know." Tanya's mouth fell open. "Richard, I'm a waitress, not some fancy executive." He smiled. "And I was a billionaire who forgot what it meant to be human. Maybe we can balance each other out." Tears welled in her eyes. "You really mean it?" "Every word." Months passed. the Hale Heart. Foundation became national news, not because of its billionaire founder, but because of its message, human first, title second. Tanya ran it with honesty and warmth, helping parents who had lost children, families struggling with grief, and workers who'd lost everything. She didn't just sign checks. She sat down with people, listened, hugged them, remembered their names. And Richard? He showed up every week, sometimes in a suit, sometimes in jeans, always with Lila by his side. The man who once measured success in billions now measured it in smiles. One afternoon during a charity event, a reporter asked him, "Mr. Hale, what made you change?" He smiled, looking at Tanya and Lila laughing nearby, a waitress with the heart of a mother, and a daughter with the courage to love strangers. The crowd fell silent. He continued, "People think money changes the world. It doesn't. Kindness does. Compassion does. And sometimes it comes from the people we least expect." That night, after everyone left, Richard and Tanya stood together under the soft glow of the foundation's sign. "You know," Tanya said with a smile, "you've come a long way from the man who couldn't put his phone down at a diner." He chuckled. "Yeah, I guess I needed to be schooled by a waitress." "Correction," she said, bumping his shoulder lightly. "A former waitress, now executive director." He grinned. "Right, my boss." They both laughed, and for a moment the world felt simple again. Then Tanya looked at him seriously. "You ever think about how crazy it is? One hug, and everything changed." He nodded slowly. "The unthinkable happened," he said softly, "and it saved my life." A year later, Maggie's diner was busier than ever. A plaque hung by the entrance reading, "In honor of the hug that changed 2 lives," and reminded the world that kindness has no price tag. Tanya still stopped by sometimes to pour coffee for regulars, and Richard and Lila often joined her. They'd sit at their favorite booth, the same one where a little girl once cried, and a stranger's hug started a story that touched millions. Sometimes the smallest gestures echo the loudest in our lives. A hug, a kind word, a moment of compassion. One billionaire learned that no amount of wealth could buy what truly matters: humanity. And one waitress proved that love isn't defined by status, color, or class. It's defined by heart. So the next time you see someone hurting, don't look away. Don't assume they're fine. Be the hug, be the hope, be the change. Because the unthinkable, the beautiful, life-changing, heart-awakening unthinkable, Mati, might just begin with you. And if this story touched your heart, share it. Let kindness go viral. Because one simple act, one human moment, can change a life forever.